Improving guest satisfaction. When our guests are happy, we're happy. At Holiday Inn Express Hotels, it's all about ensuring our guests have the best experience. We want to give them friendly, personal service so they keep choosing to stay with us. You've just learned how to use time management to improve guest satisfaction. Now, let's look at what you can do to improve guest satisfaction during breakfast. In this lesson, we'll go through 3 key guest journey stages and look at 2 scenarios. Together, we'll come up with ways to improve guest satisfaction. Let's go through the 3 stages. Stage 1. Guest arrival. When the guest arrives, be ready to welcome them with a warm "Good morning." Stage 2. During service. During breakfast, help guests with their requests. Be attentive and offer assistance before they have to ask. Stage 3. Guest departure. When guests leave, give them a friendly goodbye. Thank them for staying with us. At each of these stages, you'll have the opportunity to impact your guests positively. No pressure. Now let's look at some scenarios and see how we could fix them. During Greg's shift, some guests have arrived a bit too early, and Greg is still busy with preparation. If Greg allows himself to be too consumed with the preparation, he may forget the importance of this key journey stage, the guest arrival. So Greg can do 2 things. He can either carry on with his duties to make sure he follows the checklist by the book, or he could stop what he's doing and offer the early guests some coffee while they wait for breakfast to be set up completely. What do you think will ensure guest satisfaction? Yes, you guessed it. The second option shows guests that Greg is responsive and wants to help. It shows Greg's positive personality and helps set the day off to a good start. The same goes for when guests depart. Like Greg, you need to be there to say goodbye and wish them a good day. Remember Tracy? This time, Tracy notices that there are a lot of guests at the breakfast bar. Thankfully, she has already checked occupancy levels with the night auditor, so she has prepared enough food. Guests are still looking agitated though. What's going on? Tracy has somehow impacted their breakfast service in a negative way. You can spot it, right? It's a mess. She hasn't cleared up any spills and dirty plates are piling up on the tables. Nobody wants to eat breakfast surrounded by all that. Tracy should clear the dirty plates from tables and wipe down each station. Look how much happier the guests look when their surroundings are clean and tidy. Now, to really end the whole breakfast experience on a good note, Tracy simply needs to make sure she says goodbye to the guests when they leave. Now you know what to do before, during, and after breakfast to ensure guest satisfaction. It's easy when you know how, isn't it? Remember, it's up to you to ensure guests feel that their needs are being met. You do this by engaging and acknowledging them, by always being there when they need help. When you do this, it gives guests a lasting impression of our service, our friendliness, our warmth, our simple, smart travel. Breakfast Bar Setup Challenge. At Holiday Inn Express, we're all about staying ready. To help you practice, these next 2 lessons will be a bit different. First, we'll look at setting up the breakfast bar correctly. Then, we'll do some problem solving during service. So, let's follow our breakfast host Greg as he does a final check of the breakfast bar before the guests arrive. We'll start at the cereal station. Do you think our host has set it up correctly? You've got 5 seconds to spot Greg's mistakes. See it? Greg's missed 2 things. The cereal's running low and the labels are incorrect. He needs to refill the canisters so there's enough cereal for all the hungry guests, and he needs to check their labels. That's better. Greg's missed quite a bit at the oatmeal station. Can you spot all his mistakes? Firstly, that's the wrong utensil in the wrong place. The correct ladle should be in the cooker. And those are plastic spoons. We need metal spoons. A condiments jar is missing, and that cinnamon shaker is in the wrong place. The label on the cooker should be facing out so that everyone can read it easily. Always make sure the station is spotless and neat. Let's see if you can spot what's wrong at the hot food station. You've got 5 seconds. Got them all? Good! Greg has left the dishes open. So the food's dried out and must be replaced. There are also too many types of food out. Remember, we have a hot food menu with rotating options. He's also put the wrong serveware out, and the food identification signs are also incorrect. Now, the hot food station is ready. We're about halfway now, and you're doing well. Let's stop at the pancake station. What's wrong here? Spotted it? Nice! It's good that Greg has let guests know the machine's out of order, but he should be using a brand-approved sign. He needs to neaten and clean the station. The syrup must be in standard containers and the wrong plates and napkins are being used. That cutlery also isn't brand-approved. Double-check that everything at each station is according to brand standard. It's almost time for breakfast. Let's check in at the refrigerator station. Ready? There should be 2 yogurt flavors. One is always strawberry. There should also be 2 types of yogurt. The spoons are running low and must be restocked. You might have thought the chocolate milk was there by mistake, but it's an optional extra some hotels offer guests. And that's it. Get used to double-checking all your food stations to make sure everything is ready for guests. Check the standard operating procedures in your quick reference guide to solve problems and answer any questions. And remember, it never hurts to look again. Breakfast Bar Service Challenge. When breakfast service starts, the pressure's on. You've done a thorough setup. You're ready to go. Now you've got to keep the momentum going so that when guests arrive, you're sharp, prepared, and ready to anticipate their needs. You've learned the best practices for running an efficient breakfast service, and now it's time to apply your knowledge. In this lesson, we'll take a close look at a breakfast service and zoom in on areas that could have been done better. Together, we'll figure out how to prevent problems and deliver the best breakfast service. Everything's going pretty well here, right? Guests are having a good time. The hot food is, well, hot. The fruit is fresh. Guests are enjoying assisted service from our hosts. Oh, hang on. What's happening here? Let's give our host 5 seconds to figure out what to do here. Time's up. Got it? Good. Let's rewind. This time, our host is aware. She greets the guest as soon as he walks through the door and asks how he'd like to be assisted. Now these guests are enjoying their breakfast, but something's wrong. Let's pause here for 5 seconds and see if our host can figure it out. Let's rewind. There we go. She must keep an eye on tables at all times to wipe them down and clear any mess as soon as possible. What about the stations and the trash cans? They must never look messy. Be aware and keep things neat. Breakfast service is almost over, but this guest is running late. She sees the empty room and is about to turn away. Let's stop there. We don't want to disappoint our guests. Let's give our host 5 seconds to figure out what to do. Rewind. Hosts must be alert and attend to guests as soon as they walk into the room. If breakfast is almost over, let the guests eat breakfast anyway. We don't want them to go hungry. Hosts must communicate with guests and inform them of breakfast times and the 24-hour coffee station. Now that they're informed, they'll be sure to join you tomorrow for the full experience. In the last 2 lessons, as well as this one, you applied your knowledge and solved challenges well. You're ready to provide an efficient and meaningful breakfast service. Manage your time well and stay aware. You know the standard operating procedures. You know how to interact with guests. You are a vital part of a brand that goes the extra mile when it matters. We can't do this without you. Time management. Time is precious. It's valuable. And because our guests are always on the move, our time with them is limited. Being a great breakfast host is all about using your time well. It's about being prepared, thinking ahead, and staying ready to help your guests at all times. Because without good time management, nothing would be simple or smart. In this lesson, we'll look at 2 scenarios where our hosts could have managed their time better. Together, we'll figure out how to prevent these problems so that each breakfast service runs smoothly. Lastly, we'll end off with tips on how to save time. Let's start with scenario 1. This is Tracy, a breakfast bar host. During pre-service, Tracy followed the checklist. Now everything is perfect. She stands by the door waiting to greet guests. The first few walk in and she welcomes them warmly. She helps guests as needed, but she spends a lot of time standing around. Breakfast is quiet. An hour later, an influx of guests arrive. There are lines and the food is clearing fast. Tracy is overwhelmed. She goes into the pantry to prepare more food, but when she returns, she sees she hasn't made enough. Let's backtrack here to find out what went wrong. Tracy forgot to pay attention to her hotel's peak times. At Tracy's hotel, which is in the middle of the city, peak time for breakfast starts early. Tracy should have been aware of this. Knowing peak times helps preparation. In future, she should use quieter times to prepare more food and replenish stations. That way, the busy times won't get out of hand. Each hotel is different. Get to know the trends of yours. Know your peak times and shift your time management to suit them. Make sure you're ready for each and every guest who comes to breakfast, not just the first. Next up, in our second scenario, is Greg. Greg arrives early for his shift. He walks past reception and into the breakfast area. He switches on all the machines. He then goes into the pantry and starts prepping for the day ahead. He manages his time well. When breakfast service starts, Greg is ready to greet his guests. But to Greg's surprise, there are fewer guests today than yesterday morning. He's still attentive. He still goes the extra mile. But after service, Greg has to throw a whole lot of uneaten food away. What a waste. Let's backtrack to find out what went wrong. It all started when Greg walked past the night auditor. Greg should have asked her how many guests had checked in or out the night before. If he had known the number of guests staying the night, he would have prepared the right amount of food and catered for breakfast accordingly. So, before you open for breakfast, speak to the night auditor. Find out how many rooms were occupied the night before. Ask how many people per room approximately. This information helps you cater correctly, so you can prepare the right amount of food. Now that we know how to avoid these situations from happening, let's look at other ways to improve time management. Here are some tips to save time. For the bakery station, load baking trays the day before. Cover them with plastic wrap and store at room temperature. This will save time during setup in the morning. During service, Remember to stir your oatmeal every 15 minutes. If you don't, it will thicken and form a skin. And if this happens, you'll have to take an extra 40 minutes to make more. That's time you can't afford. Be careful not to overstock. Take the cinnamon roll station for example. You may think that warming up many rolls at once would save you from having to make more later. But they only hold for 45 minutes. If the whole batch isn't eaten within that time, you'll start hearing guests complain that they are dry and hard and they'll go to waste. Remember, more can be prepared on demand in just 30 seconds. So be vigilant and use your time well. Finally, follow the order on your checklist until it becomes second nature. Follow the trends of your hotel. Be ready. Make sure everything is prepared in advance so that there's no stress for guests, and they can stay in control. The better you manage your time, the less is left to chance.